What's up, guys? Here again, another Anomaly video. So we're going over Luke chapter 13 this week. So once again, nothing fancy this week, just had a lot of stuff going on. Had a good meeting today. Just gonna try to just get through our message today, so nothing extra fancy. Sorry about that once again. Hopefully we'll get back on the right track next week. But other than that, we're gonna go ahead and jump in, get started. Take a break, pause, read Luke chapter 13 if you haven't already, and then jump into it. All right, so this week, before we start, be prepared to have either a summary of Luke chapter 13, a prayer request that we'll talk about in small groups, and something that was impactful about the chapter this week. So I want to talk about in Luke chapter 13 when Jesus healed on the Sabbath. So now it's going to be something that connected to what we talked about last week, but I'm going to go ahead and get started reading in verse 10. One Sabbath day, Jesus was teaching in the synagogue. He saw a woman who had been crippled by an evil spirit. She had been bent double for 18 years and was unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Dear woman, you are healed of your sickness." Then he touched her, and instantly she could stand straight. How she praised God. But the leaders in charge of the synagogue was indignant that Jesus had healed her on the Sabbath day. There were 6 days of the week for working, he said to the crowd. Come on. Hold on, time out. There were 6 days of the week for working, he said to the crowd. Come on those days to be healed, not on the Sabbath. But the Lord replied, "You hypocrites, each of you work on the Sabbath day. Do you not untie your ox or donkey from its stall on the Sabbath and lead it to water? This dear woman, a daughter of Abraham, was held in bondage by Satan for 18 years. Isn't it right that she be released even on the Sabbath?" This shamed his enemies and put the people, but all the people rejoiced at the beautiful things that Jesus did. So guys, I want to kind of touch again on what we talked about last week and to bring this idea continuation into chapter 13. So we talked about being and living in a hypocritical spirit, a hypocritical life. You know, Jesus again busts out and talks about, this idea of being hypocritical. So Jesus is doing something that was very counter to what people were, or especially the Pharisees were, believed that should happen in that day and that time, which was working on the Sabbath day. But Jesus did something. He did a miracle on the Sabbath. So that was something that was very controversial. But Jesus is telling us here, like, hey, just because I did something on the Sabbath doesn't necessarily mean that I did something wrong. And he's establishing, again, his dominance over all these things. He's proving the fact that, like, hey, like, it doesn't matter that I did something on the Sabbath. Why? Because I was the one that created the Sabbath. But here's the thing. He is, pointing out the fact that lots of people are just hypocrites, quite frankly. And we're so easy to down other people for doing things wrong when in fact we do the same exact thing. Jesus is like sitting here saying, hey, you're telling me that I did this thing wrong, but yet you're living your life in sin as well. You want to talk about the Sabbath, but what are you doing on your Sabbath day? Not exactly what you're supposed to, right? So here's the thing, here's the theme, here's the lesson. We have to be people who are real. We have to be people who are willing to do what Jesus asked us to do and to be okay with who he is and what he's done. Not trying to make our own Jesus, or not trying to disqualify or discredit the Bible for what it is. We can't just pick and choose what we want to do and then down others because we got to pick and choose. It doesn't work that way. Jesus is in charge. Jesus is in control. So here's the thing. If we're going to be people that are Christian, we're going to be people that are, religious or standing up for the Bible and actually be considered, somebody who knows, follows, and is impacted by that, then you have to live by the rules that it sets. We can't look at other people and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe they're so terrible for X, Y, and Z, or, they spend way too much time doing this or that's not right. They cheated on their test. But does it really matter if you go home and tell lies to your parents about A, B, C, and D? See, we like to think that we're better because we qualify what our sin is. And Jesus is saying, look, guys, you've all made mistakes. We're all in the same boat. And I'm doing something that was helpful. I'm doing something that was right. I freed this woman from an evil spirit. And yet you're going to down me knowing what you've already done. So here's the thing for you guys today. Here's the thing for me. To recognize who we are, what we've done, and where we're going. Don't be hypocrites. Don't be people who are downing other people over silly, stupid things, because what will happen is we will become, better than thou, or have a righteous spirit. And you know what the Bible says? Pride comes before the fall. So if we're not careful, we're going to set ourselves on this, high perch, this, high tower, high seat, whatever, and we're going to crumble. We're going to fall because we make those mistakes. We're human. We're not perfect.